Ezekiel Elliot involved in a late-night incident at a bar in uptown Dallas Sunday night. According to Dallas police, a 30-year-old man said he was physically assaulted but could not identify who assaulted him. The man was taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Dallas police said no arrests have been made and the investigation is ongoing. Now, here's a little timeline for you. We put this together. Elliot has been involved in his fair share of incidents, questioned by Columbus police on domestic violence accusations for his ex-girlfriend at Ohio State. The NFL still investigating that case. Back in March, caught on video pulling down a woman's shirt during a St. Patrick's Day parade in Dallas, Texas. And now Elliot reportedly involved in an incident at a Dallas bar last night where a man was physically assaulted. So, you know, Adam, I know the story is still developing and you're keeping a close watch on it, but what do we know at this point?
There's a lot to digest here, and there's a lot to digest from a lot of different perspectives. This incident comes during the week in which Ezekiel Elliot was planning to turn in his response to the NFL report on the investigation it had launched and concluded for over the past year. So at a time where the league is getting ready to make a decision at some point here in the near future about whether or not to discipline him, and I think the thinking had been that it would discipline him, now there's another incident. Now the league can either group this with the other incidents that it had been reviewing, or it can put it into a different category. The league could view the prior incidents under the domestic violence policy. This could be under the personal conduct policy. It's possible, not out of the question, that he could be disciplined in two different areas: domestic violence, personal conduct. The league is trying to figure out exactly what happened. They're already looking into the situation. The Dallas Cowboys are trying to figure out what happened. Now, there was a social media posting last night that came from a person who claimed to be at the club, who claimed that he saw Ezekiel Elliot strike the person that was taken to the hospital in the face. We'll see whether or not that's actually true. We do not know at this point in time. But the bottom line to the whole situation is it's another situation with Ezekiel Elliot, the man that one person today told me can't get out of the way of his own situation, a man that another person told me was always the life of the party in Columbus, Ohio, was the life of the party last night again. And these are situations that have now piled up to the point where there is concern about him within the Cowboys organization, around the league, and we'll see how this manifests itself going forward.
Adam, do you know if the Cowboys or anyone around Ezekiel Elliott is doing anything to, we'll use the word protect Ezekiel Elliott, knowing that he's had this reputation?
He travels with his own protection. He's been through enough that he knows exactly how this is. Look, there was one person that was saying to me at an ESPY party last week, some of the players, some of the quarterbacks were off to the side, very aware of their surroundings, whereas he was right in the center of the whole party, the life of the party once again. So I think that the Cowboys can tell him all they want. The league can educate him all it wants. Ultimately, as Damian, as Brian can say, everybody gets to make their own decisions and do what they want. You cannot babysit people 24/7 all the time. And ultimately, some of the accountability and responsibility comes back to the player and the decision maker himself.
Brian, you've been in numerous locker rooms in your career, and you've certainly seen your fair share of troubles within a locker room. How does this affect a team going into training camp? You know, they start on Saturday.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, our coach, head coach Kyle Shanahan, does a good job of reminding us, especially when you're going on this long break, you know, protect the team. Don't put yourself in situations where, you know, you can get in trouble and make yourself look bad and make our organization look bad. So you definitely don't want a distraction like this going into training camp. I mean, everyone's excited. You put a lot of work into that 9-week off-season program. You're excited to get back for training camp, and this is really the last thing you want to have to deal with. Yeah,
if you're Dak Prescott right now, I mean, Ezekiel Elliott's his friend. He's been vocal about that. You see them together all the time. We saw them at the ESPYs together. Yeah. You know, you're going into your sophomore year. A lot of pressure on both these players. If you're Dak right now, what are you thinking?
Yeah, well, like you said, you know, with Zeke, like, you just got to know when to, you know, put yourself or take yourself out of a bad situation. I think, you know, that's the big thing. If you're Dak, you're just, like you mentioned, they're friends. You're just trying to look out for your guy and make sure that, you know, you're not putting yourself in those bad situations.
Well, I think this is what coaches feel the most, right? Time. Time is the one thing. It's that period between mini camp and training camp. That's where coaches are scared the most because it's the, you know, players have a lot of free time. Players go on vacations. They do all sorts of parties and all those type of things. And that's when these type of incidences, you know, tend to happen. Now, with a guy like Zeke, the one thing you worry about with a guy like him, how does he handle success? Very successful at Ohio State, comes into the league, becomes a leading rusher in the National Football League. Some players know how to handle success, know how to carry themselves, represent for not only themselves, their team, the National Football League. Some players, it's too big for them. So is this a situation where the league feels like, you know what? We may need to sit you down because fines don't really resonate with players. Players have money, but when you take a player off the field, especially a team like the Dallas Cowboys where all eyes are on you, that's embarrassing for a player. So will that be the message that finally gets through to a guy like Zeke? And listen, I'm not sitting here and say that Zeke committed, crimes. We don't know any of that. But there's been a lot of crumbs that's been dropped that's been leading up to this moment. Will he finally get the message if the league comes down hard on him? We'll see.
All right, well, we're going to be checking in with our Cowboys reporter, Todd Archer, who actually has the police report.